It's just past midnight. A woman is lying in the back of her van, alone, the way she has almost every night for the last 4 years. The doors are locked, the curtains are drawn. Outside is the kind of dark you only get far from a town, where the nearest person could be miles away. And then something hits the van. Not a branch, not the wind. A heavy, deliberate blow against the front of the vehicle, hard enough that she feels the whole van move. She freezes. She listens. And it comes again. She will later call it the biggest fright she'd had in 4 years of van life. In the moment, all she knows is that she is alone, she can't see what's out there, and something is trying to get at her through a thin wall of metal and glass. We're going to come back to this night, because what was actually outside her van is not what you're going to assume. Every night, thousands of people sleep in vans and trucks parked on quiet streets, in forest pull-offs, in empty lots at the edge of town. Most nights, nothing happens. That's the whole idea. You park somewhere no one notices you, you stay quiet, and you disappear until morning. But sometimes someone notices, and sometimes something comes to the door. Think about the setup for a second. A van or a truck isn't a house. There's no alarm, no deadbolt sunk into a frame, no neighbor a wall away. There's a thin skin of metal, a few windows behind curtains, and a door lock built to stop the vehicle from being stolen, not to hold someone off while you sleep inside it. The people you're about to hear from chose this life on purpose, and most of them love it. The freedom, the quiet, waking up somewhere new every morning. But that same freedom means that when the sun goes down, you are often completely on your own, in a place. Here's what makes the next 16 minutes different from most videos like it. What you're about to hear is real. These aren't actors, these aren't reenactments. Every story here comes from a real van lifer who lived it, and filmed or documented their own worst night on the road. 5 of them. And I'll tell you now, one of these nights didn't turn out to be human at all. Our first story comes from a solo van lifer who documents his trips on the road. On this particular evening, he'd found what looked like the perfect spot, a quiet patch at the edge of some woods, well off the beaten track. Nobody around. Exactly what you want. He settled in for the night. Curtains up, lights low, the usual routine. Then, late in the evening, a car pulls up. He hears it before he sees anything. The engine, then tires on the ground, and then footsteps. Someone is walking around his van in the dark. He stays still. He draws the car eventually pulls away. He starts to relax. And then it comes back. It turns around, drives back to where he's parked, and stops behind him. For anyone who hasn't done this, it's hard to describe how exposed that feels. You're lying in a box you can't defend. You can't see out without giving away that you're awake. And the one thing you were counting on, being invisible, is gone. Someone knows you're there. He waits it out. Eventually, the night goes quiet. And at some point, he falls asleep. The real shock comes in the morning. When he goes to open up, the doors won't budge. He gets outside and finds them cable-tied shut from the outside. Someone had come back in the night and physically fastened his doors closed. In his words, they'd tried to lock him inside his own van. He also finds fingerprints on the fuel cap, which points to what this might really have been about. A diesel theft attempt that turned into someone sealing him in while they worked, or tried to. But here's the honest part. He never found out for certain who did it, or exactly why. No confrontation, no answers. Just the ties on the door and the questions that come with them. He was never in danger of the door being opened. The danger was the opposite. For one night, a stranger decided whether or not he could get out. The same van lifer had another night that stuck with him, and this one is quieter, which is somehow worse. He was parked up, doing the small rituals that anyone who sleeps in a vehicle knows. Blinds drawn so no light escapes, everything put away. That careful, deliberate quiet you keep when you don't want to be noticed. He was settling in to sleep. Then he heard someone at the van. Not a knock, not a voice. The specific, unmistakable sound and feel of someone taking hold of the door and trying to open it. Think about what that means. This isn't someone wandering past. A handle doesn't move on its own. Someone had walked up to his van in the dark, put their hand on the door, and tried to get in, while he was lying a few feet away on the other side of it. He stayed silent. He didn't call out, didn't turn on a light, didn't do anything that would confirm someone was inside. He just listened to the handle and waited to see if the door would hold. That silence is its own kind of decision, and it's harder than it sounds. Every instinct tells you to do something. Shout, turn on a light, let them know you're there so they'll run. But out here, alone, you don't know who's on the other side, or how many, or what happens if you provoke them. So you do the opposite of every instinct. You go still. You make yourself as small and as quiet as the darkness around you, and you let a stranger decide, on their own. Everything rests on a lock you suddenly don't fully trust. It held, and whoever it was moved on. Like the last night, there's no tidy ending here. He never saw who it was. There was no note, no follow-up, no explanation. Just the memory of a hand on his door, and no way of ever knowing whose it was or what they wanted. It was never explained. The next story comes from a guy named Noah, and it happened while he was truck camping, sleeping in the back of his truck out in a forested area. He'd pulled over on the side of a quiet road, deep among the trees, in a spot where he was sure no one was around. That was the whole reason he picked it: remote, empty. The kind of place where the nearest headlights should have been a long way off. He got some sleep, and at some point in the night, that changed. What he describes is someone moving around the truck in the dark. He managed to catch some of it on a GoPro, though it's the kind of footage where you can hear more than you can see. In the moment, out there alone with the trees pressing in, that's its own particular fear. Knowing someone's right outside the thin shell you're lying in and not being able to see what they're doing. He got through the night, and it wasn't until he got home that he saw what they'd left behind. That detail is worth sitting with. In the moment, in the dark, he couldn't see what was happening. He could only hear it and tell himself it might be an animal, might be the wind, might be nothing. That's the story you tell yourself to get through the night on a road with no one else on it. The not knowing is almost a mercy while it lasts. It only broke later, in daylight, safe, when he actually looked at the truck and the evidence took the comforting explanations away one by one. On the side of his truck, marks dragged along the paint where someone's fingers had moved across it. Evidence of somebody working their way around the vehicle, trying to find a way in. The rear canopy had stayed locked, and that may be the only reason this stays a story about marks on paint instead of something worse. He called it the scariest camping experience of his life. And to this day, in his own words, he still doesn't know who or what it was. Our next story is different from the others because this time there's footage, real footage of the person, and it comes from a man named Scott who has lived out of a van for years. Scott is careful. He's done this a long time and he has a system. He parks on quiet residential streets, nice, calm neighborhoods where free, legal overnight parking is the whole goal. And every single night, without fail, he locks his doors. That's the rule. That's the routine. Except for one night, he was half awake. That state where you're not sure if you heard something or dreamed it. And then he heard a sound he couldn't explain. His front door opening. The door he'd forgotten to lock. While his mind was still catching up, that can't be right, I always lock the door. Someone tried the side door. The side door his bed is pressed right up against. The door he was lying against, in the dark, a few inches away. Here's what was actually happening outside. A thief was walking down the sidewalk in the dark, going car to car, quietly trying every door handle to see which ones were unlocked. Most nights, Scott's van would have been just another locked door he passed by. But this night, the front was open, and that led the man to try the side door too. And this is the part that stays with you. Scott had done everything right for years. He'd picked the safe, quiet, ordinary street on purpose, the kind of place where nothing happened. The danger didn't come from choosing a bad spot. It came from a single small habit slipping on a single, ordinary night in exactly the kind of neighborhood that felt safe enough to let your guard down. That's the quiet lesson underneath the whole thing. The routine that keeps you safe only works every single time, and it only takes once. What neither of them expected was for the door to open onto a person. Scott had cargo netting rigged across that side door for storage, which slowed it down and made it hard to open from outside. It came open just a couple of inches, just far enough for the man to see that someone was lying right there, awake, looking back at him. Scott yelled. The man ran. And this is the part you almost never get in stories like these. Afterward, Scott checked his dashcam, and it was all there. You can actually see the man walking up the street in the dark, not a noise in the night that you have to take someone's word for. An actual recording of the person who tried to open the door Scott was sleeping against. He doesn't know who the man was. He doesn't know if he lived nearby or if he did this every night or if it was the first time. What he knows is that for years he'd told himself a locked door was enough. And the one night the door wasn't locked, someone was already out there trying every handle on the street. Now let's go back to where we started. The woman alone in her van, just past midnight, something hitting the vehicle hard enough to rock it. There's something I held back at the top, and it matters. Lisa is a full-time solo vanlifer, and she's also a wheelchair user. So when the van started getting hit in the dark, she wasn't just frightened in the ordinary way. She was facing it with fewer options than most of us would have. Everything about it, in the moment, felt like the nightmare scenario. Something outside, striking the van, pushing against it. If you'd stopped the story there, like a lot of channels would, you'd walk away certain it was a person, a stranger, someone who'd found her. But when morning came, she went outside and looked, and the evidence told a different story. There were paw prints on the windows. One of her mirrors had been shoved in, and she'd cooked a meal in a slow cooker earlier, the kind of rich smell that carries a long way on night air. It was a bear, not a person, not a stalker, a wild animal that had followed the smell of food to her van in the dark and leaned its full weight against it, exactly where she was lying on the other side. I wanted to end on this one on purpose, because it's honest and because it's a different kind of unsettling. When you live alone in a metal box parked out in the wild, sometimes it's the country you parked in, reminding you that you're a guest and that it can reach you through the wall whenever it wants. That's not a monster story. It's a truer one. And for the person inside the van that night, it was every bit as terrifying either way. And maybe that's the honest thread running through all 5 nights. Not every sound in the dark is a person who means you harm. Some are thieves, some are animals, some are never explained at all, and the person who lived through it has simply learned to carry the not knowing. What they share isn't a villain. It's a moment where the thin wall you were trusting stopped feeling like enough, and there was no one out there to call. Some of these nights involved a person. One turned out to be an animal. Some left behind hard evidence, cable ties, handprints, a face on a dashcam. Others left nothing but a sound in the dark and a question that never got answered. Most nights, you park, you sleep, and nothing comes. But every one of these people found out that the thin wall between you and the dark is exactly that, thin. And you don't always get to know what was standing on the other side of it. If you want more real stories like these, actual people, actual nights, no reenactments, subscribe and stick around. We've got more coming. Until then, lock your doors.